Hey everybody, it's ShadowStar here for my episode ranking of Series 8 of Modern Doctor Who. So, Series 8 is one I was always excited to rewatch because the 12th Doctor's my favourite, and I know everyone's got a different opinion on which aspect of the 12th Doctor they like, because he's far different in Series 8 than he is in Series 10. But either way, there's absolutely a lot to love about this season, for the most part, and it's got a very interesting dynamic through the season. That being said, there's still some weak points. Let's start with the weak points first. In 11th place, we have Kill the Moon. What the hell was this episode? This episode could have been good, but it's just messy for all the wrong reasons. It's like you took the core element from The Beast Below and just made it an absolute mess. Like in The Beast Below, Amy makes a decision for the Doctor because she understands the Doctor. Here, the Doctor just leaves him and says, bye, make the decision yourself, and then I'll say, no, it doesn't really matter. There's a lot of episodes where just doing nothing is actually the solution. If they just did nothing, it works. Which is just weird. And then the moon's apparently an egg, and then lays an egg. That is the equivalent of a chick hatching and then pooping out an egg the exact same size as its body with the exact same weight and density. Don't even question the logic in this episode. There is none. Also, there's spiders on the moon, and also this episode takes place a few years before Waters of Mars, but apparently they don't desire to go to space. It's like, fix your continuity. You've got annoying... None of the characters are enjoyable in this episode. I mean, literally, none of the characters are enjoyable in this episode. Not even the Doctor's enjoyable in this episode. And if the Doctor and a companion aren't enjoyable in an episode, you've got some real trouble. But honestly, I kind of enjoyed the little bit at the end where Clara has a go at him, but at the same time it's just pointing out all the stupid flaws in this episode. I don't see it as, oh, we're pointing out the Doctor's flaws. I say it as, oh, we're pointing out the writing flaws. At least that's for me. Also, I know some people like to claim this episode is an analogy for certain things. Let's not delve into that one, because honestly, I've never really been one to see it. Because if you did, it would be really weird moral. Anyway, but still, this episode is just... It's one I never want to rewatch. Like, at least when I rewatched Night Terrors, I gained a slight appreciation for it. This, I still hated just as much. The characters are all unbearable. Courtney Woods is unbearable. Everyone's unbearable. Let's move on. Alright, episode 10. This is one a lot of people dislike, but I don't mind. It's not perfect, it's definitely got problems. It's In the Forest of the Night. Have you ever noticed this episode has a very similar conclusion? It's a very similar conclusion to Kill the Moon, where if you just ignore... If every person just sat there and did nothing for the whole episode, it would sort itself out. It's the same solution! Do nothing, it's not gonna hurt you. That's the same moral. But yeah, so apparently trees are everywhere. And then they're not. And then you've got... Okay, I didn't mind this episode because all the character interactions are at least enjoyable. Clara, the Doctor, the kids, they're all kind of enjoyable. Even though the episode itself is extremely silly and has some very faulty logic. Like, that's not how any of this makes sense. First off, trees can't stop a solar flare. It's an electromagnetic thing. Second of all, you don't pump more oxygen into the air to stop a fire, you pump less oxygen, although that would choke everyone to death. So again, ignoring the physics failures of this episode is alright, but at the same time it's nowhere near as hype as most of the other episodes in this season. I know some people hate it, and to be honest I can see why. There's a lot. Also, the girl coming back at the end was just weird. It was so random. It was just so cheesy and corny, and oh my god. Okay, we're getting into some good stuff now. Ish. We've got, in 9th place, Listen. I think people put this episode a bit higher, but I don't... I mean, it definitely has some good points. Listen still has some amazing parts. The opening with the Doctor and the TARDIS is just perfect. Like, 12th Doctor is the Doctor who absolutely can monologue on his own. Like, the 12th Doctor is absolutely the Doctor who can monologue on his own. This is the defining moment that says, yes, this is a Doctor who's known for speeches, although he had that in some earlier episodes too. The 12th Doctor, he just makes so many speeches, he's just the most brilliant person. So yeah, that opening scene in the TARDIS, absolutely brilliant. And then that little bit when he's speaking to young Rupert Pink, when he says fear is a superpower, another brilliant scene. But then there's this bit where we go to the future and it's just all over the place, and I'm not that fond of the bit where Clara goes to the old barn on Gallifrey. So, yeah. I mean, it has some good bits in the beginning, and I can see why people like it, and I like that they keep it ambiguous as to whether or not there was actually anything in existence or not. But, you know, it's an alright episode. Some amazing good speeches, but an alright episode, and, for Series 12, that's alright. Anyway, an episode people don't like as much, but I don't mind, Caretaker. This is a good one because it explores their dynamic. I know some people say, oh, it's all full of drama, or the villain's silly. It's all about the dynamic and showing how the 12th Doctor interacts with Danny, because it's the first time they've met. And it's absolutely brilliant. That scene where they first meet, or not they first meet, but like they first finally get that confrontation and everything is explained to Danny is brilliant. Then there's that later scene in the TARDIS. It really, like, as horrible as the Doctor can be, Danny really shoves it back in his face, and I like it. I like when someone can shove it back in his face accurately, not just for the fun of it, but because he knows it works, and he points out good stuff. It really sets up the character dynamic we're going to have throughout the season for the 12th Doctor, and it really will culminate in the finale. So, to me, that's what I love about Caretaker. Plus, there's a lot of light-hearted comedy bits in this episode too. It's a nice light-hearted episode, so you gotta love it. Speaking of light-hearted episodes you gotta love, it's Robot of Sherwood. An episode, again, I think I really enjoyed this episode. I don't think people do, but I do. It's a really fun episode. It's a great episode where you kind of have a historical character with Robin Hood, and he's a really enjoyable character. I know some people say he's annoying. I really enjoy him. I think it's just, after the two mega crazy episodes that were the first two episodes, Robot of Sherwood is just a really fun, light-hearted episode that feels more like a quintessential Doctor Who episode, especially afterwards, and although the Doctor's still his usual 12th Doctor self, I think we get a slightly lighter version of the Doctor in this episode, which I really enjoy. We've had the heavy-hitting episodes, now we just need to see the Doctor being himself, and I like that in this episode. It's a fun episode, the characters are great, and it's just, you need this episode. You needed this to happen like in episode 3. So, Robot of Sherwood, pretty damn good. So, moving on, we've got an episode I think so many people forget about. Time Heist. Time Heist is brilliant. The side characters are great. The villains are great. The plot is pretty damn good too. The Doctor's really good in this episode. I love the dynamic. There's never a dull moment. We've got that creature where once again, there's a cool thing of like, okay, you can't think about anything. Don't think guilty thoughts. So, that's a cool twist. And then when you find out it's a whole kind of time travel or time loop because he sets it up so that she'll call him in the future to call him in the past and it all wraps around in the end. Really enjoy that. Everything kind of connects in the long run, and I like how that works. So yeah, it all makes sense when you really start to think about the ending and how it had to work out exactly that way. It's a nice little story that you didn't realize was gonna be a time travel story as well. So, I really enjoyed this episode, and I think it goes under the radar in Series 8 because it doesn't contain the heavy-hitting character moments of Series 8. Although there is that one line where that guy says, "Oh, you called the Doctor because of professional detachment." Really love that line, that's a good one too. But yeah, gotta love Time Heist. A good time travel plot with a good, heist and episode. What do you love about it? It's great. Alright, top 5, and we're getting into the big ones. It's Deep Breath, the opening, and Oh, there's a lot in this episode. The Paternoster Gang are back for their final appearance, and, what a great way to welcome you into the new Doctor with bringing in the Paternoster Gang to help things out. The episode's extra long. You really get a lot of great character moments. This episode is really funny and slapstick. Have you noticed that? Compared to the darker moments, there's a lot of slapstick, especially at the beginning. It's like we're trying to blend in the 11th Doctor with the 12th Doctor, which makes sense. There's that great... But then once the Doctor starts to confront the half-faced man at the end, there's a lot of great stuff, like, does the Doctor push him, or when he explains, oh, you keep replacing yourself, or you don't know where you got the face. So many great moments. And, it really showcases how well the 12th Doctor is, and I like how in other episodes with a new Doctor, you're never quite sure when they're really setting into their personality. And this is so true because the 12th Doctor, even once he sets into his personality, doesn't really act like the Doctor we're familiar with, which is so brilliant. This episode just truly showcases the 12th Doctor, shows off his more darker, ambiguous side, has some lighter stuff with the Paternoster Gang. Clara's great in this episode, usually, so this is probably the best post-regeneration story there is, to be honest. I know other people would say 11th Hour. I think this is my best post-regeneration episode. I had a lot of tough time debating whether to put this or Deep Breath next, but I'm putting Into the Dalek slightly heavier because, you had the great opening, and now you've got to really showcase that new Doctor's personality. And oh boy, do we showcase it with Into the Dalek. I mean, it's Into the Dalek. It's the episode where the Dalek says you would make a good Dalek. It's the episode where, the Doctor really shows off his more callous side where he just blatantly admits, oh, well, sometimes we can't save people, and, well, if we can't save them, let's just get the best we can out of them, and stuff like that. It really shows off that darker side, but also characterizes it by saying, well, let's put the Doctor, the most harshest Doctor we've had, with a Dalek who's kind of good and can see into his mind and all that stuff. And, this episode really sets up the character development for the rest of Series 8. It's just, Series 8, the 12th Doctor in Series 8 is far more different than anything else. And that's what you gotta love about it. It's perfect. After you've had the opening, you need an episode that really shows him off, and this episode does it well. Alright, top 3, gotta give it to the finale. I mean, Missy. You've got Missy here. She's just absolutely spectacularly fun villain. I mean, it's the Master. They're always going to be a fun villain, but Missy's here. She's great in it. There's a lot of cool stuff, like, before we really explain what's going on, I really love seeing Danny in, like, the Neversphere and explaining the afterlife. It's such a cool concept to deal with. Also, this episode was deemed so creepy. Not for me, I don't see it as creepy, but the bits where they talk about the dead being alive was so creepy that apparently the BBC had to put out a press release. How crazy is that? But seriously, there's a lot in this episode. The 12th Doctor is on fire in this episode. That moment where he's falling out of the plane and he goes to the TARDIS while falling. Oh man, that's perfect Doctor right there. There's the chemistry between the two Doctor. I mean, between like the Doctor and the Master is perfect in this episode as well. Clara's great in this episode. It's just perfect. And that speech at the beginning when after Clara does that whole trick at the volcano and the Doctor says, do you think I would care for you so little that betraying would make a difference? It's just so many good moments in this episode. So many good moments for all the characters. We tie up the whole theme of the series, of this season, with Missy saying, oh, you want an army, and Danny's always been calling him a general, and, it really, especially for this Doctor in particular, you realise not just, a lot of seasons have an overarching plot, and this one did have the little threads of the afterlife, but really, it was the theme of exploring the Doctor and him being in charge and him being an officer, so-called, and all that stuff. I really love how we notice how the theme is overcome throughout this season. But once again, it's a spectacular finale with Missy and lots of great character moments. And, I mean, Kate Stewart's here too. She's great in this episode too. It's like, we just pile everything into this episode. I love how, like, it takes till part 2 before Kate Stewart arrives and all that stuff. It's like, man, it's great in this episode, isn't it? Alright, top 2 heavy hitters. You want episodes that explore the Doctor well? Let's give it to Mummy on the Orient Express. I mean, this is even better than Into the Dalek. I mean, it's an episode where it really shows off the 12th Doctor. It really is just an episode that shows off I don't want to say heartlessness of him, but the fact that, when he says, the amount of times when he said, oh, well, I can't save you, but let's get some information anyway, I really love that, and you really see in this episode, and the one I'm about to talk to, he really pushes Clara into the deep end. It's ironic. Kill the Moon is the one where he's supposed to push her into the deep end, but I like this one more, where he has to always make Clara be like him and say, we need her, say whatever it takes just to get her here. And, the Doctor is just firing on all cylinders with his harshness or his perfect one-liners. Or, of course, that line at the ending where he says, sometimes sometimes there are no easy choices, but you still have to make them. It's not a huge, gigantic episode, but I think it's perfect, and that's what I love about it. Despite the plot that's kind of leading into it, I think this is a perfect episode to show off the 12th Doctor. Alright, I'm giving my top position to Flatline. Technically, this is a Dr. Light episode. But I suppose that's not the first time Dr. Light episode has won, and you don't notice as much either. But getting to the point at hand, first reason why this is brilliant, the villains. I've heard people say, the Weeping Angels or the Silence are creepy, or the Daleks. I've never been one to be scared or creeped out by a villain. Until now. I mean, these villains creep me the ever-loving crap out. No, honestly, they do. It's things that are supposed to be microscopic happening on a giant scale, or things happening on a different plane of existence, it creeps me in an unexplainable way. That moment where he says, that thing on the wall, that skin stretched out, or that's a nervous system stretched out and flattened, that just creeped me out. And then that bit, the bit where you actually see it happening to, I don't know why, in real time when you see, the couch or something go flat, it's just, I don't know what it is about that. It actually creeped me out just watching it. It's just this is going to sound so silly, it's probably the most unexplainable, I don't want to say fear, but the unexplainable thing to creep somebody out. But it does. It's just a crazy, perfect villain. And I love, and that noise they make when they speak through the microphone, creepy, I love it. But getting into it, and then you've got the whole character point. Since the Doctor's trapped in the TARDIS, it's basically Clara becomes a Doctor, Riggsy becomes a companion. I love how, at the beginning, Clara seems to be joking that she's a Doctor, but then she quickly gets pushed into it, and both of them realize, oh no, she's actually going to have to be the Doctor. She has to lead the group around, treat Riggsy as a companion, make all the tough choices and explain how do we get from point A to B, what do we do? It's like, give them hope, lead them through the situation. You need to be the leader, Clara. It's just, it's a perfect exploration. It's almost like a Doctor tutorial mission, and I love it. It's like, combine this brilliant character moments for all that, and then of course it ends with a great Doctor speech as he talks to the villains, and then, he walks out, he gives this great speech about how the villains are evil, and he's the person who stops the Doctor, he busts out the TARDIS door. It's like, combine amazing 12th Doctor moments with a great tutorial and explanation of the Doctor and Clara, with the most creepy villains there ever has been, and this is absolutely not just my favourite episode of this season, but one of my absolute favourite episodes in general. I've never really gone over what my favourite episodes are, but this is definitely up there. Like I said, the 12th Doctor era has some of my absolute favourite episodes, and this is one of them. Like I said, you can put the 12th Doctor alone, and he is brilliant. Any other Doctor, you're like, well, you need to give the Doctor a companion. The 12th Doctor, put him alone, and he's just brilliant. He's the only Doctor who can get away with talking himself, and it's just, anyway, I've over-complimented this so much. Anyway, next time, I will be ranking the episodes in Series 9. Series 9 is a season I hold near and dear to my heart. Not just nostalgia, but I mean, I love the 12th Doctor, I love Series 9, we'll get into why I absolutely love everything about it soon. But this has been fun, I'm so happy to be talking about the 12th Doctor, this is fun. Anyway, I'll see you next time for more Doctor Who reviews and other things as well. See you next time, guys.